Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is coming to us from Toronto in Ontario, Canada. Her name is Rosena Fung, and she's here to celebrate her brand new graphic novel, Living with Viola. Hey, Rosena, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really happy that you're here. I love celebrating graphic novels. I have said on the podcast many times, my son loved graphic novels, still does love graphic novels and anime, and I certainly supported that. And anytime I was out and saw something new, I would bring it home to him. But I also, at the same time, would go into his room every once in a while and just say, would you please read a book without a picture? Once in a while, please. And I never really own the fact that reading graphic novels is reading. And is, the reading that we find in graphic novels, the stories, they're a lot deeper than, what used to happen in the Peanuts comic strip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I hear a lot about that. The comics graphic novels have come a very long way since I was younger, that's for sure. When I was growing up, graphic novels as it is not as big as it is now. Certainly there was not as many choices, and so comics often have a very, quote unquote juvenile history, right? Like tied to, it's only for kids, for young kids, and they don't have merit, but that's certainly not the case. It is a very, incredible medium for storytelling, and definitely they are books. They're books, and people enjoy reading them, and they are very much real books. And even Peanuts are they're very deep. A lot of them, they tackle a lot of subjects that I didn't recognize until I was older. I was like, this is very interesting. But yeah, I love comics very much. I'm glad that your son and many people do enjoy them.
Yeah, no, he really does. In fact, he's married and has his own place, but it's not big enough for him to take his collection of graphic novels. So we still have a closet full of them.
Yeah.
It is. Tell us about Living with Viola.
Sure. So, this book is about Livy. So she is about to start a new school in grade 6. And she's very nervous about navigating, new people, new teachers, new classes. But it is also about, her learning to live with her anxiety, who is personified in a shadowy twin named Viola, follows her everywhere, and often will amplify all her deepest fears, her insecurities, and her doubts everywhere she goes. So the book is about her learning to live with Viola, which, again, I said, it is about her learning to manage her anxiety throughout the course of this book, and presumably from beyond. It is also a book about identity. It's Livy is based on myself, Lucy on myself, and she too is a second-generation immigrant. Her parents are from Hong Kong, so she learns a lot about cultural difference in the ways that is not often accepted. But she learns to embrace it. She embraces her family, but it's a struggle and a process throughout the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also mentioned that it is based on my life, so a lot of the things that Livy goes through are, based on real life, based real experience.
So tell me, I'm guessing, since this is a somewhat autobiographical, that you had to learn how to deal with your anxieties.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What was the source of those anxieties for you growing up?
So similarly, I started experiencing a lot of anxiety also in grade 6. I think it was simmering for a while. And when that occurred, I honestly didn't know what was happening. It sort of felt like, I'm fine 1 second, and the next minute I feel a lot of debilitating fear. And I couldn't pinpoint the source of it, actually. That's quite interesting. It felt so overwhelming, but, would talk to my parents and they say, what's wrong? And I'm like, I don't know. I just feel very scared, right? And so back when I was growing up, mental health discourse was not as prevalent as now. So I'm very glad of the changes that have happened. But at the time, my parents and I didn't have the language to articulate what was happening. We didn't quite know who to turn to, who to talk to, and what was happening. So it took a little while, but I was finally diagnosed with panic and anxiety disorder. And when I did find out what it was, it felt like such a relief because I thought, oh, okay, I'm not, strained. This is not, there's nothing like unnatural or weird or, I felt for the first time, I could put a name to something that I was experiencing. And it felt very helpful. It was a relief for sure.
That's really interesting that once you had a name, once you identified this thing that was haunting you for so long, then it sounds like you had a course of action. You had a way to kind of deal with it.
Identifying it was truly, it was such a relief. It felt like I wasn't alone. That was a big part of it. And that was one of the main impetuses of me wanting to write a book for kids, or for adult readers or any readers to say, oh, look, I feel these same things. I've never said it out loud maybe, or maybe someone hasn't understood, but someone else has felt the same way and, I'm not alone. And then therefore to go and seek help.
Yeah. I've shared on the podcast that my son did have a very difficult time in middle school. So right about the same age as you, 11, 12, 13 years old. And I spent a lot of time looking at him and looking at his friends. And one of the things that I observed is that especially guys, but I'm sure girls too, they feel like everybody at that age, everybody knows everything. Everybody got it going on. I don't have it going on. So I got to pretend that I know everything. And the reality is no kids 12, 13 years old know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I actually feel that way as an adult. I often feel like, oh, everyone's got it together. I got to pretend. But I definitely remember, during those ages, younger ages, it's just navigating school and friends and family. And I look around and I'm like, everyone's got it. Like, I don't know what's happening. And it's especially difficult, talking about mental health, certainly like growing up, it was because everyone looks like they have it together. And I did not have it together. And I'm like, I have to hide this. And for the longest time I did. I didn't talk about mental health until actually quite recently. I'm in my mid-30s now, but it's probably only within the last decade that I started speaking up. And I'm like, no, that's too late. I want kids, I want them to know that it's okay and they can talk about it whenever at any age. And it's okay.
It is. I absolutely agree with you. When I was in middle school, we didn't even call it middle school when I'm not that old. And, the talk about mental illness, there were people in my family that struggled with mental illness and were actually hospitalized, and no one ever talked about it. Mm-hmm. And it was, where's so-and-so? They're away. Just keep going, move along, nothing to see here. Mm-hmm. What do you think has changed? Why is it that we're able to speak much more openly about mental illness these days?
That's a good question. I mean, I certainly know that experience as well, about the desire to hush up, other illnesses within family or acquaintances. A lot more people are speaking out, and I have to think about why I finally felt emboldened to say, like, okay, I want to talk about it. I've always felt very candid in the work that I do. And it was actually in seeing, either on social media or either reading different other books or seeing it in media. It just, when it became to talk about even a little bit, I was like, okay, right. I'm not alone. I'm going to speak out now. And so more and more people feel, I guess it's like a safer space now. I can't say it's completely safe, of course. Everyone has different experiences and different environments they are growing up in. But I think it's like a slow trickle, I suppose. One person decides like, no, this is enough. I have to talk about this. And it led to other things. And so my exposure to other people talking about it so candidly, it made me feel like this is it. This is the time I will start. And for me too, when I started talking about it, it was very small, like little hints on the work that I do, comics I put up on social media or just talking about it with friends. But soon it snowballed. I was going to say snowballed because that sounds negative, but in fact, I talk about it more and more. The more I talked about it, the more I felt comfortable. And I feel that has a good effect on others as well around. So I'm hoping that by talking about it in my daily life, that it has helped other people feel like, okay, I can talk about it too. And that is the point of this book, in that I'm trying to make it as, it is a part of life. It's a daily experience, and that having this book is like, yes, you can talk about it. These are experiences that happen. It is not something that needs to be quiet down. And I even talk about it in the book. There is, some families don't want to talk about mental health. There's still a lot of stigma to it, and I'm hoping that this book will help erase it or diminish that stigma. It is life, and it's not anything bad. It is just a different way that we have to navigate life.
Yeah. For someone out there that's listening who really they're familiar with the word anxiety, they've heard about panic attacks, but they've never experienced it themselves. Can you share a little bit about what that's like in the moment?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm talking to you now and everything in my life seems, it's fine. I'm quite happy. So panic attacks, anxiety, when they come out of nowhere. It feels like it comes out of nowhere. I'm doing whatever. I'm cooking, cleaning, I'm talking on a podcast and everything's fine. And then all of a sudden there's like the feeling is suddenly my mind grabs onto like a thought, that might be negative, whatever it might be, just like, and it worries me. It could be anything, like it could be mundane, or it could be like the world is ending because of climate change, or did I turn off the oven, right, if I'm outside? And then, most people, or a lot of people, they're like, okay, well, let's think about it, or they dismiss the thought, right? But for people with anxiety, they latch onto it, and it becomes like a cycle. So I think about, did I turn off the oven, and then I think about it over and over again. I cannot let it go, to the point where I feel a lot of symptoms that are physical symptoms, such as I'm sweating, the back of my head feels numb, my heart races, right? And I can't let it go. Sometimes people are talking to me, and in my head, all I can think about is the house is going to burn down, this is going to happen. Do I have insurance? So on and so on. So it's many people who, think worrisome thoughts sometimes are just able to like, okay, I'm sure it's fine, move on, right? Those with anxiety cannot help but grasp onto them, or rather, it's like the thought won't let them go. And it's like a spiral. You keep thinking it over and over, and you think, no, it's fine, but your brain goes back to it over and over again. So it can feel kind of like walking into an abyss. So the last part of my book is it is actually a scene in which Viola and Livy are together, and Livy is running away. It's like a dream sequence, but it is also metaphors on how it feels to go through an anxiety attack, where she's running, she's tripping, the thoughts keep haunting her. She's literally about to fall somewhere into an abyss or off a cliff. That is what it feels like. That's,
I imagine that's terrifying.
It is, yeah. It is. It's very terrifying, and then when you're in the moment, it often feels like I'm stuck in this moment forever. I am never getting out. But the thing is, like, I have always been able to come out of it. And a lot of it is because I'm older now, so I have developed a lot of coping mechanisms for myself. You know, when they come, I recognize it for what it is. Recognition is often not enough. You know, I'm still feeling those feelings, but knowing that I have certain mechanisms to help me cope, they're like anchors. So it helps me, you know, claw my way back into like a grounded reality. And again, that's what Livy learns throughout the book. Like, what are her coping mechanisms and how do they help her, come back? You know, how does she calm down, during a panic attack? So I have the same.
So it sounds like Living with Viola would be a fabulous book for a family to start conversations with their kids, especially if their kids are experiencing any kind of anxiety or panic attacks. But also, oftentimes we really love to remind families that if your kid is not experiencing panic attacks or anxiety attacks, they're going to know somebody who is. You're going to be going to school with somebody who is. So it's real important for those kids to have conversations so they can develop some empathy.
Yeah.
What would, you know, if there was somebody in your class back in middle school who knew that you were experiencing these challenges, is there something that they could have done that could have helped you get through them?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I didn't talk to anyone about it except my parents. I was able to hide things well, you know, and I feel like a lot of people do that. Like, when I go through an attack, I don't want people to know that it's happening, so I'm able to have a mask. It would have been nice to know that if I'm going through an experience like that, and if my friends had known, I wouldn't have to pretend that everything's fine and just, you know, sometimes I would talk, but I felt so dissociated with what I was saying because in my head was all this like turmoil and all these thoughts. It would have been nice that if they would just, you know, sit with me and just like wait it out. Or what really helps is when people, and it's different for everyone, for myself, if just someone is just saying, it's going to be fine, it's fine, like relentless optimism is so helpful for myself. It's different, you know, everyone has different coping strategies, but if I could just hear, if someone just told me like, it's fine, everything is going to be fine, that's not going to happen, you know, whatever, it would have helped me not have to fight so hard, and it would probably have helped me get through those episodes faster. So hopefully, you know, everyone is different, and if people who are reading this book don't have these experiences, but they know someone who do, it's important to ask them, like, what do you need from me now? Do you want me to just be quiet? Do you want me to speak? What would you like me to say? And then, you know, help them through.
I thank you for sharing that, because I think it's so, it should be intuitive. You know, you see somebody struggling with a bag of groceries. It's like, hey, can I help you? Can I pick this up? But when we see somebody struggling with their emotions and with their feelings, a lot of times it's we walk away because we're afraid that we can't handle it. But we never think to just ask, hey, how can I be a good friend to you right now?
Right. Yeah. I think I saw it in a meme recently. It wasn't even a meme, but it was something on social media. And I'm like, this is good. Like, you know, if someone, it's not just someone with, going through an anxiety or panic attack, but just if someone is sad even, right? Exactly as you say, if someone's dealing with different emotions, it's like, what is it that you need? Do you want me to offer solution, or do you want to just vent and just listen, right? And I'm like, that's a great thing, because just being upfront and asking, because sometimes that makes all the difference. Sometimes I do want solutions. I want someone to help me, but sometimes I just want someone to listen as I go on and on about what I'm sad about. And that whatever that differentiation is will help me get through that specific period.
Boy, that was a lesson that was really, really hard for me to learn, that sometimes people aren't venting to get your opinion and solution. They just want to vent, and they just want you to shut up
Yeah.
and listen.
I honestly, I still have I have this experience too. It's like someone is upset and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I just, I start babbling, but I'm like, wait, I should just ask them, what do you want? And I'm happy to provide that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you just want me to sit here and I can do that. It's a lot easier than trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Exactly. I would say for anxiety attack, sometimes there are no solutions. It's just you have to ride it out. And so sometimes just having someone listen to you, and, not offer a solution that sometimes can have a judgment like, oh, you should just be happy. Right? Like, that doesn't work like that. But if you're just listening, I'm like, okay, that's good. And you're not judging me. I'm just going to keep telling you what I'm afraid about. And it helps.
Tell me, as somebody who has struggled with anxiety and panic and worried about being judged, and thankfully you've developed some mechanisms and some strategies to deal with that. But I imagine then taking the next step and kind of spilling your guts out all over the pages of a graphic novel, that takes some courage. Where did that come from for you?
That's a good question. I have always been very candid and honest in the work that I do. I just, you wear your heart on your sleeve? That's what I do. I wear my heart on the page. Comics actually help me figure out stuff, like whatever's happening in my head, whether I have a problem. When I write it down and when I draw it out, I immediately feel better. It just helps me work things out that I can't do it just in my head. And so writing a book about it it seems like a very natural development in the work that I already do. And again, it's what we were talking about before. It's because discourse is opening up about talking about mental health. And so I am at a place in time where I feel I'm comfortable with doing this because I've talked about it so much now that writing a book about it is, that seems totally like, that's what I would do. But if you asked me this 10 years ago, I don't think I would be at the right place. I would feel very much like, no, I can't let everyone know what's happening. Like, what does, I'm just trying to figure it out. But because I've been talking about it so much at this point, that I felt like this is the time, right? I feel very comfortable. And, it's going to be different for everyone. Not everyone's going to be comfortable immediately. And that's totally fine. You take it at the pace that you need to feel comfortable about talking about yourself. And then hopefully you will, you'll get there where you are like, I feel good about it, and again, took a while, but and the thing is, the more I talked about it, slowly at first, but little by little more, I'm hearing a lot of people with anxiety, and I'm like, wow, I never would have thought it. People that a lot of my friends or just acquaintances sometimes like, oh yeah, I experience this. I'm like, I'm surrounded by people with anxiety. We could have been talking about this earlier. So I hope the more we talk about it, for any individuals, the more they talk about it, the safer they will feel, more comfortable about it.
Yeah. So Living with Viola is a debut graphic novel, as I understand it. How did you enjoy the process? Is this something that you want to continue to do?
I love it. I love making comics so much. And this is my first long form comic. It took years, like literal years, but it was so great because it actually was like an anchor working on this. I worked on most of this actually during the first lockdown and so on. And, a lot of people were struggling because for obvious reasons, it was such a difficult time. But knowing that I always had something that I have to work on, a deadline, kept me focused. That's different for everyone, right? Everyone had different reactions to it. And, this was just my personal reaction. Like having, pages I have to ink helped me keep going throughout the day. So that was helpful, but I love comics so much. Every part of it was a pleasure to work on. I chalk it up to a great editors, and Annick Press, who published this book, has been very wonderful working together. I'm actually working on a second graphic novel right now with them. It is not a sequel; it's a completely separate story. It's aimed for the YA market, but again, just working on comics gives me such joy.
That's fantastic. Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to get more information about Living with Viola and also learn more about Rosena Fung.
Sure, yeah. You can check out my website. It's rosenafung.com. And then you'll find more about the book there, as well as other work that I do. I do illustration as well. And my Instagram, like I talk a lot about, I have just like random comics that I just do about my life. That is, my handle is Rosena Fung. That's it.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Living with Viola, Rosena Fung. Hey, Rosena, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's time for another Reading with Your Kids Rewind. A look back at some of the most memorable moments when we celebrated books that deal with STEM and STEAM. Science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, we would love for you to connect with us on social media. So many different ways for you to do it. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram. Check out our Reading With Your Kids page on Pinterest. You can find us on Twitter at JedleyMagic. And of course, you can always connect with us on our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You check out our blog, sign up for our free newsletter, and if you want to contact us, use that handy-dandy contact button. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Rosena Fung. Please be sure to check out Living with Viola. Also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Michael Murphy, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.